Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Welcome to the Syndicate Theory podcast, where we delve deep into a broad spectrum of topics, such as politics, the unexplained, science, and much more the world and universe has to offer. The focus for today's podcast is dynamic capitalism, built versus blood. People that built their wealth versus people that were born into wealth. Public versus private business. What's the difference? Who would you rather? The person that built their wealth or born into it? Psychological stresses, built versus blood. And controversial success, as well as who got it right. We as a Syndicate Theory will discuss these questions with information found from various research conducted by individuals and the government while keeping an open mind on this topic. If you find yourself tuning in to our podcast or recording and enjoy the topics we discuss, please subscribe and leave a like.
All right, plug in. Welcome to the Syndicate Theory podcast. I'm Cole.
And I'm Duke.
And today we're talking about dynamic capitalism, built or blood. Built refers to those entrepreneurs out there who decided to take it upon themselves to build an enterprise from the ground up. Blood refers to those business leaders who actually came into their business role based on their familial connection, basically a family inherited business. There's a lot of great stories out there. There's challenges both ways, whether you start from the beginning, put your nose to the grindstone and build it up, or whether you are the successor to an entrepreneurial dynasty. My question for you, Duke, what's your favorite story out there?
Well, my favorite story actually has to do with Mohed Altrad. Do you know who he is?
Yeah, actually I do.
Well, he owns the Altrad Group, right?
Mhm.
And you think this guy has a net worth of $3.5 billion. And
A
it's
little
all
bit
from the
above me, but yeah, I'll catch up.
scaffolding business.
Say what? The scaffolding business.
It's from a scaffolding business, all right? This
Okay,
guy also
please
owns
explain.
Mount Pillier Herald rugby team. All right, so this guy's rolling in the dough. Why? Well, I'll tell you what, he's got a hard story. It begins like this. He was born to a Bedouin tribe in the Syrian desert. They're basically like wanderers or gypsies. This guy didn't even know his birthday until recently.
Not
His
that
children.
important.
Yeah, well, yeah, Bedouin tribe, right? You don't really know the day, right?
Yeah,
So
it saves time for entrepreneurship if you're not wasting time celebrating your birthday. So
exactly, right? So his children that he has now basically gave him a birthday of March 9th, which basically summed up his estimated birth date was around 1948. So March 9th, 1948. When he was 4 years old, um, in this Bedouin tribe, his mom actually died to an illness. Um, and it was pretty traumatic to him. His
four
father was
years
a
old.
tribal leader. Yeah, 4 years old. Okay, so no mom, no nothing.
Wow.
And the reason why I say no nothing is because his dad was a tribal leader that basically, forced
Didn't
himself upon his mother.
didn't his dad
And
disown him at one point as well?
yes, he did disown him. Now the only family they actually had during that point in time at the age of 4, between the age of 4 and 7, was his brother, but his brother died due to abuse from his father. So yeah, pretty hectic story at the beginning for him. After that, after he was disowned, his Altrad actually lived with his grandmother in a little
Okay.
tent with this wandering tribe, the Bedouin tribe, raising goats, camels, sheep, things like that, right?
Okay.
And the grandmother was actually very against school, so she basically said, "Hey, what do these shepherds need to know books for, right?" And
Wow.
His response was, "You know what? Well, let me tell you what." And I mean, it's really good because these entrepreneurs, right? They don't always take the advice of others, right? That's why they're so successful. So he
Right.
basically didn't listen to his grandmother. And he said, "Okay, you know what? Forget this. If they're not gonna, let me go to school, I'm still gonna go to school." So he ended up sneaking off like the campgrounds where the Bedouin tribe was, walk to the local schools because they actually stay there for a couple of years, right? When I say
Yeah.
wander, is they don't wander every day; they wander like every so many years, like gypsies do, right?
Okay.
Um. So yeah, he attended local schools. He was always made fun of because he was part of the Bedouin tribe. Really didn't have anything. The guy basically dressed in rags while he was in school, but he got himself an education, right?
Yeah,
When he was
yeah.
okay. So now here's a funny thing. Okay. Altrad. All right. When he turned 7, his father reappeared in his life. So this guy had like left the tribe, then came back and gave him a bike. Now this is where entrepreneurship actually started. This kid was smart. Okay,
Okay.
went out there and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna make money so I can have books and I can have supplies." Well, his dad bought him a bike. So you know what he did with that bike?
What did he do?
He rented it out. Rented it out to the local students for money. Right?
He's already about the hustle. I love it.
Exactly,
How old
man.
was it? You said he was about
He
7
was
when
only
this
7
happened?
years old when this happened.
Wow.
Only seven
Wow.
years old when this happened, right?
Mhm.
So later on in life, through his teens, and I think roughly when he was like around, between 18 19 years old, 1969, he ended up in Montpellier. I believe that's how you call it, the city's name. It's a
Montpelier? Yeah.
Mediterranean city. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it borders between Spain and Italy.
Okay.
He ended up attending the Paris Dauphine. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering that university. While only knowing, now look at this, look at this.
Reputable.
I mean, this guy's had a challenge, right? So I mean,
Well, let me.
he's
I mean,
out in
I
the
don't know.
Syrian desert.
His mother and brother were dead by the time he was 7, and his father disowned him. I
Yeah,
don't know. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
a
oh, yeah.
little bit of a challenge here.
There you go, right? And he only knew a tenth of French when he arrived in Montpellier, and he attended college with only knowing a tenth of French. His interests were actually in mathematics and physics, right?
Hmm.
But ended up becoming or actually getting a bachelor's in computer science, right? And he ended up getting his PhD also in computer science. Um, and I apologize. Yeah, he also did get a degree in math and physics.
And he
Um,
also did computer science.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I
Well,
think
he got his
that kind of
PhD in
shows
computer science.
he was ahead of his time there.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, if you don't know much French, right? Mathematics, physics, and computer science is a language on its own. So I'm pretty sure that once he learned it, he was able to communicate, but as well learning French at the same time. I
Hmm.
mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Now,
Um,
was he involved in business at all at the time? Because you said he kind of started his own business
no,
renting
no,
out
no,
his
no.
bicycle when he was 7. But when he was
Right.
in Montpelier studying, was he doing any kind of side hustle business or anything like that?
Well, at this point, he was doing something at a tech firm, right? And he was working as a computer scientist at a tech firm, which allowed him to end up getting his citizenship, right? After he got his
French
citizenship,
citizenship.
he ended up. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You mean French citizenship?
Yeah, 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 I'm sorry. French citizenship. My
Okay.
bad. Yeah, and basically ended up marrying a woman from France, which is kind of crazy because this lady actually helped him out. I don't have her name though, but he later spent 4 years in Abu Dhabi working at the national oil company, right?
Okay.
So there was like low tax and really nothing to do. So by the end of this 4 or 5 year contract, he ended up accumulating $600,000.
Okay. And so the
Right.
Abu Dhabi thing worked because he was from Syria, so he spoke the language.
And he
Okay.
he didn't. But the thing is, that he had $600,000 and he had no idea what to do with it.
Hmm.
Okay. Now he had some things back at home in Syria. He had a couple of friends that actually built a business like building computers, and they made several hundred thousands of dollars doing that. And that kind
Nice.
of inspired him. And he was kind of like, okay, well, you know what? I got to figure out where to put my money.
And I'm guessing
Uh,
the bike hustle wasn't in
mm,
play anymore. Okay.
yeah. No, I mean it could have
Six
worked
hundred
if he.
thousand will buy a lot of bikes.
a lot of bikes, and he could have rented it to everybody in Abu Dhabi. It could have worked. But I tell you what though, exactly. So like, I believe that he ended up going, I believe, in August of 1985 to Florensac, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering this. It's in southern France. It's where his wife's native village is.
Okay.
On holiday, and the neighbor actually came over, started talking business with Altrad, and said, "Hey, you know what? You're really into business. Would you like to buy a failing scaffolding company? Right? Out of everything in the world,
Yeah,
it's a scaffolding.
you always go for that deal. The failing scaffolding company.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
That's a
Um,
no-brainer.
but they're already at least hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Right? They're bleeding every single year. But he called one of his friends, this guy named Richard Alcock, and he was like, "You know what? What do you think about buying a scaffolding company with me?" And he ended up agreeing to it. And the reason why is because, like I said, Altrad thought that, you know what? If you look at all the architecture and all the commercial buildings that are starting to come up in France, and all these airports and all these other businesses, what do you think they need actual scaffolding to maintain and to create new things? He was like, you know what? Yeah, this is something that's actually pretty interesting. So he ended up going ahead and buying the company. Do you know how much for?
Well, you said they had several
One
debts,
French
so hopefully he
franc.
was able to negotiate it down, right?
One French franc.
Just a franc.
One French franc.
That sounds like a pretty good deal, to be
Exactly.
frank.
That's to be fair. Oh my god. um.
1 franc. Okay.
Yeah. No. Definitely. But I mean, yeah, he ended up getting like a slew of liabilities with this company, right? And of course, if you're gonna buy something for one French franc, like you already stated, there's some issues with it.
Hmm.
Altrad ended up getting 90% of that, as his buddy Alcock ended up getting only 10% of that. But they built the company within about a year. He was able to cut costs, making small profit, and actually launching subsidiaries. It was very interesting. And
Subsidiaries
subsidiaries, exactly,
to the scout.
exactly.
Huh.
Yeah, exactly. In Spain and Italy, right? So his goal was to actually grow the company. And then before the 90s actually occurred, he ended up branching into concrete mixers. Now, I'm just going to throw this in really quick. During this time, while he was focusing on scaffolding, and when he ended up getting these subsidiaries and this branching out into concrete mixing business, he did make a mistake. He ended up going into latex gloves, which he realized right away wasn't going to be beneficial for him. Right. And he
Hmm.
figured, you know what, if I'm going to do a business, I'm going to stick with that business and everything that belongs to it, as opposed to
Yeah.
going outside that market.
Yeah, which was the thing I was thinking when you said latex gloves,
Yeah.
because it seems like, his buddy, you said, Richard Alcock, recognized that there was a lot of development in France at the time. So if you think about, and it's something that I think you encounter a lot when you talk about business people, they kind of find the supporting business, right? So you
Right.
have construction, development, but think of all the businesses that support that. There's a lot of opportunity there. So he thinks, hey,
Businesses. Yeah.
scaffolding, construction, and then renovating, you need painting and things like that. Painting buildings, you're going to need scaffolding to get up there and paint.
Even
So
building homes. Building homes.
exactly,
Yeah.
it seems like that would match. But the latex glove thing, that kind of threw me for a loop. Like, wait, what does that have to do with his main business, as
Right.
far as, sort of the construction industry and the maintenance, and sort of the building maintenance industry? So I could see
Exactly.
why he would kind of backpedal from there.
Right. So, after after that, um, like right during the 90s, so everything he ended up getting some subsidiaries, buying into the concrete mixer. He also did tools for construction as well. Now the thing is during the 90s, we all know, they ended up having uh, this recession, right? And he knew ahead of time, of course, probably about a fourth of a year a quarter of a year. And he figured out, you know what? He was like, I think what I need to do is end up cutting about 30% of the workforce uh, a quarter a year to a half year early. And this actually helped his company survive.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, of course, I mean, you're cutting jobs, but as long as this business stays, you can always get your job back,
Yeah,
And I
which is
think
kind
that's
of
the point that
a
most people
lesson.
don't. Yeah,
Yeah, you never want to lose your job, but if you can get hired back, in a year and a half, it's better than the company going under than a lot of people without a jobs, and then you're competing with each other to try to
right.
find new positions. So yeah, it's a good move.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, um, emerging out of the recession crisis, Altrad was trying to go and get loans, but nobody wanted a loan to a Syrian-born person during that time,
Hmm.
and then had like zero industry experience,
Hmm.
regardless of what his company balance sheet said. Now, take it as it is, whatever it is, but I would say, like, for me, if I were a bank, but that's not how banks operate. If this guy's making millions and millions of dollars, well, maybe I can make a loan. But they decided not to. So what Altrad did instead, right, is he had a whole slew of smaller competitors that were in distress due to the recession. So what do you
Because
think he
they hadn't made the move like
did?
he had as far as
Exactly.
reducing costs,
Being a
raising
smart business
prices.
owner, exactly. So what do you think? What do you think? What do you think he did? Just
Mm,
guess.
okay, so he's making money. He's flush with cash. Can't get a loan, but he's got struggling competitors. I'm gonna go ahead and say he kind of played it like Jeff Bezos played it. He bought out his competitors. That's kind of how Bezos
Exactly.
built Amazon, right?
That has to be one of the smartest business moves, right? He couldn't get a loan, so what he did is he went back to the very beginning. Okay, I bought this company for scaffolding. I cut costs. I made it profitable. So what he did is the same thing with these smaller competitors. He basically took them in, right? He bought them, and then they're in distress for money, right? So of course it's almost like that one French franc. I'm pretty sure it's not one French franc, but he got it for a cheap price.
Hmm.
And then he basically brought new efficiencies out of them, right?
Yeah,
So
breathing new life into the companies.
exactly. So after he did this after 2003 or during 2003, the Alchek Group had over 21 subsidiaries and a solid
Okay.
base for the Alchek Group to bring in $130 million a year. This is a kid from a Bedouin tribe. Okay, $130 million a year. That he grew his company to that at that point. All right.
I bet those banks wish they would have given him a loan.
Well, yeah, I bet you his dad wishes he was better to him, right? I mean, come on
Yeah,
now.
his dad.
Yeah,
His
I
dad's
mean,
like, I wish I didn't abandon
eh,
you, son.
yeah,
I
exactly.
need
But I mean, I think what happens though is that before I continue on, I think all these things psychologically built him into the person that he is to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Um, But no. Yeah, so he ended up acquiring, I think years after 2003, he ended up acquiring his competitor Pledek. And this gave Altrad Group the actual continent-wide visibility. So basically, he went from like Spain, Italy, and France worldwide to global after
Nice.
he ended up acquiring this company. Which was a good deal for him. He actually still continues to absorb competitive companies at a rate of around like three a year, and we're not talking about small companies. We're talking about big companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Plotech. But yeah, since 2011, Altrad Group continues to absorb competitors, like I just stated. And then now he's actually into French politics and possibly the French presidential candidate for 2027.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, if you look at the growth, I mean, if you look at this story, right,
Mm-hmm.
from somebody that built this business from the ground up, right? You look at it, you hear sometimes nowadays people say, "Oh no, I don't know if I can do that." Well, you never know. Because you can look at this as an example, as a glimmer of hope. I mean, this kid started from the very bottom and rose to the very top. And yeah, like I said earlier, man, net worth at $3.5 billion, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, it's one of those stories when you think about it, because I think a lot of times you can really get caught up in the tragedy of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Mom and brother dead by 7, disowned by dad. But the question I think it would benefit to ask yourself is, what did he see during these times? Like what was he noticing uh, during these times about human behavior, about how groups form, this
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing? Like, what lessons is he learning? Because I this is going to sound cheesy, but I agree with what Yoda said. Remember what Yoda said? What's the greatest teacher? Failure, right? You
Failure.
learn a lot
It
more
is.
from things falling
Latex
apart.
gloves.
Exactly. You learn a lot,
Yeah.
and I think he realized something like, well, yeah, when you have a failure, you try to cut your losses quick instead of keep beating a dead horse. And I think that's something that so many have said, as far as their first failure is what got them to be successful, and I think that's true definitely for Mohed Altrad.
Definitely, man. Definitely, man. Well, I like I said, I'm telling you this story, and it's a fantastic story. But do you, by chance, have one
A favorite story as far as
about a
success?
business,
Yeah, yeah.
about a businessman that started, and whether it be built or blood? Like and once again, when we talk about blood, we're talking about people that were born into wealth, right? And we all think that people that are born into wealth don't have it hard, but when you think about all the social pressures around you and how you can't fail your family, I mean, that becomes pretty stressful.
Yeah, yeah, to say the least. I mean, all eyes are on you, and I think that's kind of the thing with Mohed Altrad. If he
Mhm.
had never gone past being a shepherd, no one would have faulted him. Yeah, he wasn't from this sort of established pedigree,
Right.
and there wasn't sort of all eyes on him. But my favorite story is actually one of an enterprise acquired through blood. Not
Okay.
not blood as in taking your competitors out, but
Yeah, yeah.
blood as in you were born into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Familial connection, and mine is actually about the Agnelli family,
Oh,
which
okay. Yeah.
is very very prominent Italian family. If you've never heard of the Agnelli family, you've probably heard of some of the companies they own, because they own the Ferrari, which is a very prominent brand. Through one of their holding companies, they own the Economist newspaper, very famous newspaper. It's actually a lot of it's on a lot of university campuses too. So
Okay.
anybody who went to university was probably seen the newspaper. But they're a very interesting family, because they have something of the status of royalty in Italy, and they're not actually royals per se, because Italy is a republic, so you don't really have a royal family like you do in, say, the United Kingdom. But they have that status, and the reason is that Gianni Agnelli, who is kind of considered the patriarch of the family, at one point he owned about 25% of all companies listed on the Italian stock exchange.
Oh
25%.
my.
And his grandfather, Gianni Agnelli's grandfather, is Giovanni Agnelli, who started Fiat. And
The
Fiat is
car.
now the car
Right.
company, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the company that owns Ferrari and
Well,
Maserati.
they did military as well, correct? Like military vehicles?
Yeah, they were involved with the military, and Johnny Agnelli is kind of considered to be, even though he didn't found the company, he's considered to be the great chairman. He had a nickname in Italy called L'Avvocato. Hope I just love that.
La
L'Avvocato.
Lavacato.
Yeah, it means the lawyer, right? Because he
Oh,
he was
okay.
actually a lawyer by training, but he rebuilt the business of Fiat after World War II, because all of Europe, not just Italy, was pretty much bombed to smithereens. Most of the major cities were just kind of
Pretty
torn.
bad. Yeah.
And so he decided to keep the company afloat, and his parents were gone at this point. Him and his cousins and his siblings decided to put some money they had from other business interests back to building back fiat because it was kind of the family business. But I'm not actually talking about Gianni Agnelli as far as blood. I'm actually talking about a guy by the name of John Elkann. So who is John Elkann? Right. If I'm talking about the Agnellis, where's this John Elkann guy come in?
Yeah, where does he fit in?
He's actually the grandson of Gianni Agnelli. He's the son of Gianni Agnelli's daughter, Margherita.
And it's Gianni, correct? Gianni?
Yeah, Gianni
Okay.
Agnelli had a daughter, Margherita Agnelli, and Margherita's oldest son is John Elkann. So John Elkann, and this is kind of where it goes to challenges both ways. It definitely seems challenging coming up like Mohed Altrad did, and a lot of other entrepreneurs like this kind of constant theme you see of adversity. You know, one of the stories I like as far as coming up was to become this sort of mogul or tycoon was Jay-Z, who grew up.
Pressures.
Yeah, Jay-Z grew up in the Marcy Projects, you know, but became an entrepreneur himself. And you see that so often, even with Li Kai-shing, you know, a refugee to Hong Kong. You see so many of these stories of people having this adversity. But I think what can get overlooked is that there's a different type of adversity with some of these legacy families, business legacy families, because John Elkann, born in 1976, and he was a young guy when he took over the control of fiat because his grandfather died in 2003, and it kind of left the family in disarray. You even see these interviews.
Turmoil. There's some turmoil. Okay.
Turmoil, and you know, kind of like every generation goes, you know, all generations, like the boomers have a certain view of millennials, and then millennials have a certain view of Gen Z and things like that. So when Gianni Agnelli died, there was this huge vision of these younger Agnellis. You know, I mean, John Elkann, his last name's Elkann, but he's just as much an Agnelli as any of the Agnellis. And there was a lot of like you said, turmoil surrounding him because this company is very much associated with Italy. Like I said, his grandfather at one point had 25% of all the companies listed in the Italian exchange. At one point, Fiat employed about 5% of the Italian labor force.
Right.
And then you have these young kids in it because Johnny made a decision to skip a generation. He made sure that his grandson, John Elkann, inherited his controlling interest in Fiat. Right. So he skipped the generation. He skipped John Elkann's mom's generation as far as control of the company. And so that not only created this controversy within sort of Italian media, global media, because Fiat was something of a global company, but also within the family. So his mom actually contested this in court, the fact that her father's will left all his controlling interest in the company's called Exor. It's the family's holding company,
Right.
but it owns their controlling stake in Fiat, and so
you're telling so the mom
yeah,
got mad that the money was all left to the son that probably could have ended up like running the company, which he did.
Yeah, he ended up
talk about stressors.
as chairman, which is what I say. You know, a lot of times there are kind of these unforeseen consequences of
course
of inheriting by blood.
It's called jealousy.
Jealousy, and then you talk about Mohed Altrad, whose mother had passed away by the time he was 7. Well, imagine being in your early 20s and your mom is taking you to court because she is
4.
4, right?
When his
mom died, right?
Yeah.
So your mom dies at 4, tragic enough, but you know, imagine being a young man and your mom is taking you to court because she is contesting your control over the family business. And from all accounts I've read, they don't actually speak anymore. So this happened in the early 2000s, and it's been almost 20 years, and apparently they're just not on speaking terms anymore.
Well, talk about cutthroat. My goodness.
Exactly. And this is something I've heard from lawyers. They say that lawyers that are involved in like in criminal court, you know, defending clients, you know, let's say your client's charged with murder and you're defending him and the state's trying to prosecute this case. Apparently the lawyers in these cases are much more friendly to each other than lawyers who are in the civil courts. And the civil court is usually just about money, right? And criminal court, your client could be facing life, could be facing the death penalty, something like that. And these lawyers are actually a lot more nice and civil to each other than the ones in civil court who are fighting over money. You know, some business transaction gone wrong, your client owes me, my client 30 mil. No, that's not how this works. But apparently they're just so cutthroat when money's involved. And that even transitions to families. So when you're talking about someone coming up in a situation where they didn't have much and
Yeah.
any win's a win, right? You have the bicycle business like Mohed Altrad did. It's a
Hmm.
win. He's making a little bit of money. Maybe he wasn't making that much. Maybe just some, small change, but still, it's a win from his position. But when you're talking about the Agnellis, this business is worth billions, and
Right.
they're fighting over control. Essentially, it kind of boils down to money. But Margarita, John's mom, actually did get 100 million euros from her father, Gianni Agnelli's estate. So it wasn't like, oh, if I'm fighting this so that I don't become destitute, sort of thing. Like I'm cut out of the will. It wasn't even about that. It was just about the fact that almost a level of respect. You're going to give my 20-something son control of the company and skip my entire generation.
Well, it makes sense if you went to school for it. So if the son went to school for it, right?
Mhm.
Then I could see the father giving him the business, as opposed to the mother. I don't know if the mother did. Do you know anything about the mom's like educational background or?
Well, she grew up around the business, and another thing is she had a brother. So Johnny Agnelli had a
Hmm.
son, Eduardo Agnelli, but he wasn't necessarily uh, the
The
business type.
heir?
He
Oh,
wasn't. He
okay.
just wasn't the
Okay.
business type, and his father saw that, and so he ended up actually jumping off a bridge in Italy in the early 2000s, and so he ended up committing suicide.
Oh my
But
God. And this is the
it,
brother, right? The
this,
others.
yeah, this is John Elkann's uncle, right?
Okay.
And
Okay.
so this kind of plays into that whole familial situation, because if you're born
Mm,
into this great dynasty, like I said, Agnellis are considered to be something of Italian royalty. Even
right.
John Elkann, when he got married in 2004, he married a woman by the name of Lavinia Borromeo. The
Hmm.
Borromeos are sort of Italian nobility. In fact, they own a few islands like Isola Madre in Italy, which is an island.
Island of Mother. Okay.
Exactly. And that they actually got
Nice.
married on the island. If you want
Wow.
privacy, owning an island, if you don't want photographers crashing your wedding, have it on your family island, right? That's the lesson for today. But that wedding was considered to be something of a royal wedding, just because the Agnelli family has this status. And so this whole breakdown of family dynamics, and then even the death of Eduardo, you'll never really know why he decided to jump off a bridge, but there was something that was brought up in the book Mondo Agnelli. It's a
Hmm.
really great book about the family. It's kind of like the family autobiography, if you will, written by Jennifer Clark, and it kind of details his never really kind of fitting in. He went on a lot of you know trips to different parts of the world and studied religions and things like that. So you're having this family that is this really business focused family. They kind of have this certain status, and you're trying to find your place in it, which can be tough in its own right,
Hmm.
versus having a situation like Mohed Altrad, kind of
Hmm.
no real family support
Yeah.
to speak, or family to speak of, disowned by
Yeah.
dad, mom, and both
Everybody
brother are
had to
gone.
pay their dues. They had to pay their dues before they were able to become very successful for themselves.
Exactly.
And I mean, even if you're born into the family, right, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to be a success because there's tons of failures that are out there. But I think the biggest thing is if you fail to stand back up and just continue to move on with it. But yeah, this story is very interesting because of the fact that I think a lot of like I stated before, I think a lot of people believe that when you're born into a family with money that there are no social pressures, but there are a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, this whole scenario played out as far as uncle committing suicide, mom
Right.
challenging
Exactly.
the will to give
Son
control of
for
the company to
for the
her son.
company, yeah.
This whole thing played out in Italian media, like a soap opera. It wasn't as big here because the Agnellis
Mhm.
are something of an Italian family. Even though John Elkann was actually born in New York, so he's American by way of birth, but he lives in Italy. The family is pretty much based in Italy, but even
Mhm.
even that'll come into question a little bit later in the story as far as how Italians view the Agnellis, because when John took over, Fiat wasn't doing so well. Even the CEO of Fiat at the time of when John took over in 2004, and his
Mhm.
grandfather passed away in 2003, was trying to make some power moves. Because, like I said, the Italian, not only the media but just Italians in general,
Yeah.
didn't view this younger generation of the Agnelli family as having the charisma, the
Well, that's how it is every generation.
sprezzatura. It's an
Right.
Italian word.
Yeah.
Sprezzatura. That kind of means the swagger, I guess, if you will, of
Right.
Gianni Agnelli and his generation when he was running the company with his family, his brothers,
Mhm.
cousins, and stuff like that. So you got the media taking shots at you, and then the CEO of Fiat at the time tried to make some power moves to try to consolidate his own position within the company,
Mhm.
and they weren't having that, and the company wasn't even doing that well. So you imagine, young guy takes over the company about the age of 28. He had been on the board since he was 21, and one of the things he said is his grandfather kind of started grooming him to take over when he moved to Turin because he kind of grew up all over the world. He was born in New York, but then the family moved to Brazil. He lived there. They lived in the UK, France, and he finally wanted to get connected with his Italian roots, and so he moved to Turin to study, and that's where his grandfather was running Fiat, and
Right.
so really started having these conversations. And he's a young man of 18, and he said that his grandfather talked mostly about people because it's people who are running the business. And I think that is going to be a valuable lesson when this story plays out because after his grandfather passed away and he's actually trying to make the decision who's going to run Fiat, right? He had the position of the chairman, kind of overseeing things, making some of the final decisions as far as management, but he wasn't going to be the direct CEO because he was managing Exor, the family's holding company. And so they also have holdings on Juventus Football Club. It's the
Oh,
great
okay.
Italian football club. They own that, and his cousin Andrea Agnelli actually runs that. And so,
I guess it's kind of a status thing, right? Altrad owns a rugby team, and the Agnellis, well, Elkann now owns the soccer team.
yeah, through the family holding company, yeah, yeah.
Right.
So you see a lot of these tycoons go into sports at some point in their career. It's interesting.
Where's this? Where's Elkann now, man? In 2021.
He um he's pretty much dividing his time between Italy and the Netherlands, and that's kind of a point of contention and kind of one of these things that kind of highlights it's not so easy to inherit an enterprise because the family is considered to be Italian.
Was there a
Something of
merger
Italian
or
roots.
anything like that?
Yeah, so when he hired Sergio Marchionne to run Fiat back in
Mm-hmm.
2004, because the company wasn't doing so well, uh, Sergio Marchionne, he relaunched the Fiat 500. That's why you saw those little Fiat's 500 cars in
Yeah.
like the mid 2000s driving around. That was Sergio
Right.
Marchionne. And then they merged, they decided to consolidate as a way to protect their revenues because if you consolidate with a company, you don't have to compete against them anymore, right? You're essentially one and the same. So Sergio Marchionne was the one that went to the US government and was able to combine Fiat with Chrysler Automobiles. So it became Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, FCA. And Sergio Marchionne ended up passing away. And then the new CEO of Fiat decided the idea came, hey, maybe we could merge with, they tried to merge with Renault, the French car maker. They
Okay.
had some government issues with that, and the French government wasn't so much giving the thumbs up on that. So they ended up merging with Peugeot SA. And
Okay.
so the merger of these two companies, Fiat Chrysler and Peugeot, formed. It depends on how you measure it. They're like the fourth largest or the sixth largest, depending on volume of cars or by revenue. But they're one of the largest auto manufacturers now. And they changed the name to Stellantis and then moved the whole thing to the Netherlands.
Wow.
And so this is kind of where the whole legacy thing comes in because they're considered to be Italian family. Fiat literally means um, a Turin factory because Fiat stands for Fabbrica Italiana Automobile Turin, uh, Torino. And so it literally means Italian automobile factory of Turin. That's literally kind of how the name translates. But they still have some offices in Turin, but they moved the headquarters for Stellantis, this newly formed company between Peugeot and Fiat, to the Netherlands. And a lot of Italians thought it was a tax move because they saved on taxes by moving to the Netherlands.
Wow.
John Elkann claims it is not the case. He claims it's the case because they have substantial holdings in the Netherlands. In fact, the
Mhm.
family holding company Exor, which their controlling interest in Fiat is through the Exor holding company, is
So
based in the Netherlands. So he's saying it's more of a
definitely.
consolidation thing, not so much the tax thing.
So it really sounds like this guy's successful, but I got a guy. I think his story is a little bit interesting. Same, basically born into wealth. He didn't do as well.
Which is also true.
Uh,
Which is also kind of the double-edged sword.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Who
And
we talking about?
well, I don't know. Let me see here. Let me see if I can get you to guess it. Okay, they make a whole bunch of phones, a lot of computer products, electronics.
Well, it's not Apple.
It's not Apple.
Okay.
It was started by Lee Kun-hee. Okay.
Oh, are we talking about LG or Samsung? I think it's Samsung.
Yeah, we're talking about Samsung, man.
Nice.
So the successor to Lee Kun-hee, which was his son, Jay Wiley, this guy's got like a net worth of like $8.7 billion. Although, I mean, he did succeed.
Should we
in
call
his
him up and
own
see if he needs a loan? I mean,
No, well, no,
that's
no,
it?
no, no, no. He did well despite all those like lawsuits in the past
Okay.
between them and Apple. But yeah. So his dad passed if I'm correct, yeah, 2020. But I mean, he was working in the company the whole time. But he was basically groomed for this position to take over for his father, right?
Mm-hmm.
He ended up getting his BA in Asian history from Seoul National University. He also got his MBA at Keio University, and then attended Harvard Business School. All right,
Okay.
for a doctorate in business. All right, he spent 5 years there. Do you think he graduated?
I think he partied.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. He didn't graduate, but not necessarily like partying or anything like that. Because if you look at all some of these
If
famous
you're rich and you go to
billionaires,
university, I
yeah,
think you might do
yeah.
some partying.
Well, yeah, you look at Elon Musk, you look at Bill Gates, they never finished, right? They basically went there to get what they needed and leave so they could run a company, right? So, yeah, education always helps. But he ended up starting Samsung like he didn't start it, but he started at Samsung in 1991. Um, and of course, since his dad worked there, he ended up creating a position, or a couple of them. He first started as the vice president of strategic planning, and then as the chief customer officer as the management position, which was created for Lee exclusively, right? Of
So they
course,
created a
by
position just for him?
just for him, right? So
I
I don't
So he really
necessarily
didn't even have to apply to this job.
right.
They created it for him.
Right,
All
right, right. So I don't necessarily know if it's like, like Elkann, right? Like Elkann had to kind of like strive and go through these struggles to get to where he was, to prove, that he was worth being like a chairman or the
And a
CEO
lot
of
of people
the
thought he
company.
would fail. Yeah, a lot of people.
Exactly. And then we have somebody else that, everybody thought was going to succeed. And I mean, in some ways he did, but I think because of, things that were given to him, which I mean, I don't really know, but I would assume that things that were given to him kind of led him in the wrong way. So he was a good boss, a very good boss, according to the people that worked under him. He was very soft spoken and never yelled. Not really a micromanager, but was always there to help and question, right? So you think about this guy and you think, well, this guy would be really successful. But come to find out, I believe in 2009, he ended up becoming the chief operating officer of Samsung Electronics. 2012, became the vice chairman of Samsung. Then after that, after years and years, I say about maybe 5 years of running the business, he ran into some issues, right? So he ended up spending time in prison between 2017 and 2018.
Well,
The
that's never what
reasons?
you want.
No, exactly. Bribery, embezzlement, and perjury. Okay.
Which
Now,
actually, you know what, dude? That kind of does play to some of the dynamics at play here, because you think if you're born into this money and then you're tasked with continuing the family business and keeping it going, if you already have access to a substantial amount of cash,
right.
bribing someone or trying to get things to work your way using some of these under the table deals would cross your mind probably. I mean, even the most ethical person. But if you just don't have the money there and you're just trying to build it up,
I don't
kind
know,
of
man.
saved from these situations, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, Cole. Like my biggest thing is that, I understand business, but at this point, like these are large businesses. I'd figure that if you paid someone money for a service, then it wouldn't really be considered bribery if they agreed to it in the first place. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. But
Well,
yeah, he was
yeah, but
supposed.
it just proves the
Uh-huh.
point. The money can get you in some trouble, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the biggest thing is like with this is that the reason why he only served 2.5 years. Well, he's supposed to serve at the beginning 5 years. He only spent 1 year, and then the court agreed to 2.5 years. So he only spent like 1 year between 2017 and 2018, and then he was released. Uh, and it was due to the appeals court, but. This was for bribing a confidant. All right, Choi Soon Sil. Okay, which was the confidant for President Park Geun-hye, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, but um, it was a corruption scandal that led to the impeachment of Park Geun-hye, which was the first ever female leader in South Korea. Right.
Hmm.
So basically, what happened is that they found notes on his laptop when they issued the warrant. Went in, got the laptop, and saw that 28 million was paid from Samsung to Park's confidant, which was that Choi Soon Il or Seal, in exchange for government backing of a controversial merger of two Samsung affiliates. And this happened in 2015,
So
right?
the $28 million payout was to get the thumbs up from the government so they could merge.
Right. Right.
Oh,
But
man.
remember, 2012, he became the vice chairman of Samsung, right? And then in 2014, this is when it happened. 2017 is when, he went to court, went to jail for it, right?
Mm.
So, not jail, prison. But
Yeah.
Samsung ended up winning this approval in the merger, right? Of course, if you have money, you can buy what you want, right?
Mm,
And do what you
most
need to
places,
do.
yeah.
Yeah. So the merger of the affiliates were Chill Industries and Samsung C&T, which strengthened. Okay, now there's a reason why he did this, right? It strengthened Lee's control over the conglomerate, right? So he wouldn't be able to be pushed out. So
I
I
got
think
a, I
that.
got a question for you, Duke. And this is just your own personal theory, but
Mhm.
do you think sometimes, and even in this case, you can maybe it's like playing chess, how you sacrifice pieces.
Yeah.
So you think you could have said, okay, yeah, I might get in trouble for this $28 million payout. Someone is going to notice. It's not like
Mhm.
28 bucks, it's 28 mil.
Right.
I might end up in prison, but it'll be worth it because of the long-term strategy.
Well, yeah. So here's the thing, right? As of right now, and I don't have much more to say about this guy, but uh he was released his like I told you, he only served like 1 year. The only issue is that after the appeals court, they sent it up to the Supreme Court in the I think it's the Seoul Korea High Court for a retrial.
Hmm.
And as of 2021, right, this guy that's worth like $8.7 billion USD, all right,
Hmm.
is serving another 2.5 years for that issue back in 2014.
Hmm.
Right. But here's the thing. So as of right now, they're trying to find a new chairman, but you have a point, right? It's strategic. So maybe after these 2.5 years, he's going to come back and he's already set himself up because he's got all the shares of the conglomerate, right? So he's got it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree.
it's something, but it's something we've seen already that we've talked about. A lot of this sort of pawn sacrifice moves. You said
Yeah.
Mohed Altrad bought a company for a franc, so his risk
Exactly.
isn't that high because he didn't spend that much. But the company had a lot of issues, a lot of assets tied up, a lot of debts. But it's a long-term game, right?
Right.
And I think that's something you see with a lot of the individuals that we're talking about. That there's definitely a long-term strategy there. Even in terms of,
I
Gianni Agnelli letting his grandson take control of the company. His grandson's a young guy. He's kind of got a wide berth to learn, versus having someone who is maybe middle aged taking on the company. Like, all these decisions seem to be made with some sort of long term implication. So
yeah.
who knows why he did it? I mean, A
Well,
lot of these moves are
strategically,
pawn sacrifice,
I agree. Yeah,
short-term sacrifice to long-term gain.
that is a very good analogy. And the thing is, though, is that it depends on how you measure it. Like for me, I don't necessarily know if I were a business if I want to do business now with Samsung because of his past history, right? Like I don't know if this guy's willing to do all of this. Maybe it's a little dangerous for me to go into business with this guy. And but strategically for him personally, and I wouldn't say business for itself, not Samsung in general, but for him, yes, it's very, very beneficial to him himself.
Yeah. But this is what I say as far as some people I've talked to who are in the legal field saying that, yeah, when it's a civil case over a lot of money, people are cutthroat. When there's a murder case and somebody might hit death row, people are pretty nice about it. So
Right.
the money changes the dynamics for sure. And one of my favorite stories about someone who came from the ground up, I already mentioned, was Li Kai-shing, and he
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
Wait,
he.
wait, wait, wait. Isn't there a nickname for him? Isn't it Li Ka-ching? Li Ka-ching, right?
That's my nickname for him, Li
Oh,
Kai-shing.
I'm
Either
sorry,
call
Li
him,
Ka-ching.
I
I'm
either call
sorry.
him
There you
Li
go.
Kai-shing. He's made so
I
much money.
I know we've talked about him before.
Yes, so I either call him Lee Kaching because he's made so much money, or Lee Bling
Right.
Bling just because
Li
he,
Bling Bling.
he has made so much money, which is actually not his character. He has a very sort of humble character. He doesn't really buy expensive clothes or wear expensive watches and things like that because of his beginnings. So he's actually originally from Guangdong, where he was born in 1928, and then his family moved to mainland China when he was about 12 years old because in the 1940s there was a major event that happened. The Japanese invaded mainland China, and so he became a refugee and he entered Hong Kong at that time. And so Hong Kong was actually a British protectorate at the time. It belonged to the British at that time. So it was a great refugee destination because if the Japanese have invaded China, they didn't want to mess with the British because the British are kind of a major military power at that time, still are. So, yeah, invading China because China was kind of next door and easier. They didn't want to trigger anything with the British, so Hong Kong was a place where a lot of refugees went, and so he was a refugee at 12, really good at school. Apparently, he said he loved to study, but then his father died of tuberculosis when he was 15, so he had to drop out of school to support his family. And he ended up working in a plastics factory as a technician, and he worked 16-hour days. So it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. A lot of these sort of setbacks are really set ups and set you up later because you're working 16 hours a day in a plastics factory. You might learn a thing or two about how to manufacture plastics, just maybe. And so he did. And so he ended up in 1950 starting his own business. So he's only 22 years old at this time, and he had some savings and he borrowed some money from relatives, and he started his own factory. So in all, he said he had about 6,500 US, right? But this is back in
Right.
1950, so 6,500 US is probably like what, maybe 50 grand or something like that
Mhm.
now, a little bit more than it would be today. And so he started his own factory because he had learned so much about it, and he hired the best technicians he could. So he bought kind of like a a dinky dink building, this kind of rundown building, but he retooled it to
Right.
the specifications that he wanted to make it really efficient because he had learned so much about the business and hired the best technicians. And so some foreign investors came by to take a look at this factory, and you can tell, if you're in business for yourself, you can tell despite the size of the factory, it's a little bit smaller or whatever. It's not um, sort of this big factory that a company's poured a lot of money into because he's just getting started.
Mhm.
But you can see it running and be like, yeah, this is really efficient. Kind of like one of my favorite entrepreneurs, Ray Kroc, who founded McDonald's Corporation. He didn't start the restaurant, but he started the corporation because he saw the McDonald's
Well,
brothers.
yeah, the McDonald's brothers. Yeah.
Yeah, he saw their restaurant layout and realized this is really efficient. This is like, this is a phenomenal setup. And so same thing with Li Kai-shing. They saw his factory like, yeah, it's kind of a smaller deal, but you got a really good operation here. So they placed a big order. And then it was off to the races from there. They placed a big order. He started making a lot of money. He said his best growth from the business was between the ages of 27 and 30. So when he was 27 to 30 years old, his business grew exponentially. He said he had more orders than he could really handle. And he said by the time he was 30, his entire family didn't even have to work for the rest of their lives because he
Fantastic.
was doing that well. And so yeah, just same thing. Humble beginnings, like I said, a lot of times setbacks are set ups, and they teach you how to kind of move forward, I would say. So, yeah, really great story. He's now one of
What's his
the
worth now?
he's hovering around the 28 bill range.
Wow. Yeah, 28. But could you picture that 20? No one, I mean, I don't think anybody really looks at billion. Like, has anybody ever counted a billion before? And this
Kind
guy's
of,
got 28 something billion dollars.
yeah, it was really funny. I mean, he's
Yeah.
so I think just having the kind of upbringing that he did, being a refugee, it kind of sparked this curiosity about things because and I think that's kind of one of the dynamics because I think if you're born
Yeah.
into wealth, built for his blood, if you're born into it, at least from an early age, you might not necessarily have the same curiosity about how it all came to be because you're just happy you get taken to school in a limo or something like that. You have nice things around you, you have good food, good education, all this kind of stuff. Things are going well, and you might not be so curious to what is the foundation of this lifestyle. Whereas a refugee in Hong Kong is kind of a really compact city.
Right.
So you see the wealthy. It's not like, the poor people are on like way far away on one part of town and, the wealthy are just living it up on the other side. It's a
Right.
compact city. So you see people driving nice cars and stuff like that all the time, people doing well. And I think this sort of curiosity comes from that. You're like, okay, where's this sort of no man's land between where I'm at and where a lot of these, high rolling business types are at. And I think you get curious because even Einstein never said that he was that smart. He just said he was just extremely curious.
Right. Right. Curiosity, right?
Hmm.
No, that's fantastic, man. But no, as far as that goes with that type of success, once again, I have another guy that built a business from the ground up, and I want to know if you can actually guess this guy, and people listening, this is actually pretty neat, a little bit more knowledge for you guys. But
Hmm.
there's a guy in Sweden that started a business, okay,
Mm.
and it had to do with furniture. And can you guess who that guy is?
Swedish furniture. Uh, I'm gonna I'm gonna
Not
just
too hard,
go
right?
off, I'm gonna go off the top of my head and say maybe their company colors are blue and yellow.
Ah, yeah, very good, very good. IKEA.
Yes.
Okay, IKEA, right? And the gentleman that started this business, his name is Ingvar Kamprad. All
Household
right.
name? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah, definitely. And if I'm correct, before he passed, or at the year that he passed, he was worth 42.5
Cents?
billion.
Cents?
Well, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
billion.
no, at that point when he passed, yeah, forty-two
Oh,
point
wow.
five
Oh,
billion
okay.
dollars.
Oh,
I,
wow.
I wouldn't
That's
even
great.
know what to do with that. Okay. And I'm going to be honest with you. If I couldn't start a business with $42.5 billion, something is wrong.
Actually,
Um,
you know what Richard Branson once said? He said the best way to become a millionaire is to start out as a billionaire and
billionaire.
buy an air and then buy an airlines.
No, it makes sense though,
If
right?
you're gonna lose
Right.
money, yeah,
It takes money to make money.
exactly.
Um, but yeah, Comprado was actually born 1926, right? Long time ago, March 30th, in a small farm uh, called, if I'm correct, it's Elm Taid. Maybe I said that wrong. I butchered it, but it's in a village province of
It's on the bucket
Unganyard.
list. It's on the
Unganyard, right? Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll get it right one day, right?
hmm
He got it right. That's the point. Um, but
It's good to see that.
this is during the time like but he was an entrepreneur at early ages in life. So at 6, right, at 6 years old, he was selling matches, right? And by the age of 10, and I don't know what it is with billionaires and bikes. Okay, I don't get it, but he rode his bike around town selling Christmas decorations during Christmas time, and at other times fish right from the market and pencils. So this kid was probably making a killing, but going
another
to
billionaire who was selling things off his bike? Warren Buffett. He used to have a paper route,
oh yeah, man,
riding around his
yeah.
bike throwing papers at people.
All right, man. You know what? I'm just gonna start riding my bike more.
Yeah, that's
I'm gonna start loaning it out.
That's the whole lesson of this episode. You know, if
Right?
you got a bike,
Yeah.
you need to ride that thing or rent it out to your friends. See you in 20 years. It's you're worth $1 billion.
Entrepreneurship, exactly. So, went to elementary school, and then by 1945, or I'm sorry, excuse me, 1943, at the age of 17, Kamprad's father, after he went through high school and elementary and junior high, if that's what they had during that time, his father gave him a small sum of money, right, for doing so well in school, right? But now Kamprad actually had dyslexia, so it's a little bit harder for him, right? And everybody knows another person that has dyslexia that is, very wealthy nowadays is Tom Cruise.
I did not know he had dyslexia.
He did, yeah, but forced him to work harder. But now Tom Cruise can basically memorize a script in half a second. So amazing people. But with his money, he actually started IKEA. Now the funny thing is, everybody says IKEA. Well, what does that mean? It's actually kind of funny. It's his name, Ingvar Kamprad, right, from the town that he's from, which is
right.
Helmand Yard, right, and then from
Yard, yeah,
the Elkann Yard, right. So that's what IKEA stands for, which is really interesting. So in 45, Kamprad actually started IKEA. What he did was just take like local vendors, like they come in, they bring like furniture that they made, and he had a store where they could sell it, right? 1947, where his business started taking off, he bought a couple of milk trucks to deliver these pieces of furniture. Now, here's the issue, just like anywhere else, right? These guys that are manufacturing the furniture in 1955, right? They're kind of upset at the fact that, Kamprad was actually selling it for so cheap. So they ended up boycotting him. And this forced him to actually start in-house designs, which was furniture, right? Mm-hmm. So the thing that Kamprad's actually very famous for is he's actually behind the simple yet revolutionary innovation that's now called the flat pack, right? So basically, it's like selling an entire room, right? Because people used to go and they used to buy furniture, and it would be like a piece, right? It'd be like a couch. Okay, there you go. But he would sell all of it all at once, right? And I mean, there's a lot of people that actually do that now.
Basically sell you a room.
Exactly. Selling a room.
Okay.
Exactly.
So yeah, if you just move to a new city, whatever, you get an apartment and your apartment's not furnished, you can do a one-stop shop.
It's like room store.
Saves you time. Yeah, saves you time, saves you money. You're not riding all over the place trying to figure out what you need. They have the whole setup for you.
Exactly. And this concept right here actually allowed him to sell a lot of furniture because it was simple, it was affordable, right? It was flat pack furniture. It was designed and distributed. And that was sold in house, which was very smart, right? Because now he didn't have to owe anybody any money, right? And he didn't have to take a small percentage. All this money was his because of the design, right? So
money.
Yeah, and like I said, the idea behind IKEA, right, is being able to afford stylish like furniture, and he accomplished that.
And I think one of the themes, like the constant themes we're seeing, because a lot of people think, oh, billionaires just care about money, blah blah blah, but a lot of it just comes through trying to survive. Like you said, he went fully integrated, so he doesn't have to pay the middleman or pay any suppliers. He's doing it all himself as a way to kind of stay afloat. But then a lot of these innovations that help you stay afloat end up making you a ton of money, especially when you move quicker than the other guys, because their costs are a little bit outsized compared to yours, so you can offer that cheaper price and you start to gain market share.
Exactly. So yeah, Kamprad's business grew, Okay. IKEA ended up spanning not only through Sweden, but Norway and Denmark, um, uh, then Germany, via
Hmm.
Germany, and then continental Europe, and then now worldwide, because they got 300 stores like worldwide. Okay. And this is all in 38 countries. I
Huh.
think, yeah, which is really interesting because like anytime I see like a new IKEA store open up,
Hmm.
right? There are a lot of people standing out front to go in there and take a look at it, right? Because now they go from not only furniture, they sell some pretty good popcorn, right?
Yeah, they sell
And
food.
snacks, yeah, exactly. Which is fascinating because you think, yeah, most people, and it's an ingenious idea to keep a person in the store.
Yeah, you're gonna buy
Is like,
something.
sometimes if well, no, it's not only that. Like, you start to go shopping, and then guess what? You say, okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna go get something to eat to make a
Yeah,
decision. Well, they keep you there
yeah, they have their
to
own
make,
restaurants now. Yeah, you're gonna get
yeah,
hungry putting in laps around this store. You work up
yeah.
an appetite.
Now, the one thing that I find phenomenal, okay, is the fact that he made $42.5 billion before his death. His three sons run it now. Okay. The thing is this whole time he never borrowed one single dollar or issued one single stock.
So
And
you're
I
saying
think that's
IKEA is still privately owned by the family?
100%.
Oh, dang.
And a worth of 45, right?
Hmm.
Or $42.5 billion, which I think is amazing that he never had to borrow anything, do anything
That
like
is
that.
amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. But
Right?
yeah,
Talk about a story.
yeah, that is amazing. So and it's kind of one feeds into the other because you say built versus blood. Well, in order to inherit it by blood, someone had to build it. So his sons run it, and
Blood. Yeah.
But yeah,
Eh,
just a few other great stories out there as far as families. Christy Hefner, Hugh Hefner's daughter, ran Playboy from 1988 to 2009,
Yeah.
and she didn't get forced out. She left to focus on some philanthropic efforts, but she's the longest serving female CEO. You have the Arison family. Mickey Arison owns Miami Heat and is the CEO of Carnival Cruise. The Ambanis with Reliance
Well, let's go
in
ahead.
Egypt.
Also, who else? The Wertheimers that own a majority share of Chanel too.
Yeah, the Glazer family that
Yeah.
Malcolm Glazer, the patriarch, and then he's got
Mhm.
6 kids. They own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the current Super Bowl champs. They own Manchester United in the UK. I think it's considered the most valuable soccer brand in the
Mhm.
world. I think they're more valuable than some of the other ones like Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Right.
Is there any other story out there that you like before we wrap up? Anybody you wanna tell us?
Uh, not really, man. Not really cold. I think the biggest issue with it, well, maybe one. Okay,
Okay,
and
hit
this
me.
is just Sidney Weinberg, right? Sidney Weinberg
Oh
is
yeah,
another guy
that's
with
an
Goldman
interesting story.
Sachs, and
And
just to,
where did he start? His dad got him in the company, right? Right. His dad was like big time, and that's
yeah,
how he got
yeah,
in.
but
Or am I totally off?
but the thing is, but no, he basically started as a janitor's assistant,
Sorry.
not a janitor, but a janitor's assistant, right?
Yeah.
$3 an hour, and basically worked his way all the way up to the top. I think that's also something that we miss sometimes is that you have your billionaires that built the company all the way up. You have your billionaires that were born millionaires, I guess you could say,
Mhm.
um, that kind of worked for their success to take over a company. And then Sidney Weinberg is the guy that actually worked at a company that he didn't own, right? First and
Mhm.
foremost, or he wasn't born into, or
Mhm.
he didn't start,
Mhm.
and he worked himself all the way up to the top, which
Yeah.
which I think is
From the
fantastic. But
janitor's closet.
yeah, yeah, from the janitor's closet, right?
The only thing harder
And
than that would be like being the shoe shine guy and working your way up. Yeah.
well, he also did that too.
Did you?
Yeah. So
So he
the
did this.
biggest thing
All right, I'll pass.
that I exactly, and the biggest thing that I take from this is no matter where you're coming from, like whether it's you're born into it, you started it, or you work for a company, work your way up. I think the keys to success are pretty much just enjoying your job and working hard at it, as opposed to uh not.
Hmm.
So um it's kind of hard to really focus on, I mean, which is harder in life. They all do share their crisis, no matter being built or blood or growing through a company.
Mhm. And I think one of the things we've seen kind of our takeaway is most of them, pretty much all of them, didn't try to do it alone. You said Mohed Altrad had his friend Richard. Um, John Elkann made sure he found the best CEOs to work with. He had a really good relationship with Sergio Marconi, who he chose to be CEO of Fiat. Uh, even I mentioned earlier, Jay-Z is an entrepreneur, born in the Marcy Projects. A lot of people know Jay-Z in terms of the hip hop mogul, but if you think about how many collaborations he's done, and he couldn't find anybody to distribute his music in '95, so he was selling music out of his car. Teamed up with some friends to found Rockefeller Records. But if you think about like in terms of music and collaborations, part of the reason why he's had such a long career and was able to do so well financially and musically is he's teamed up with so many people. He's teamed up with Timbaland, Eminem, the Neptunes, Kanye West, R. Kelly, DJ Quick, Ninth Wonder, the Buchanans, Rick Rubin, and of course, a young lady by the name of Beyonce, who he happens to be married to.
Anybody else? That's a long list, man. But
just wait, he's not done.
Exactly, and I think that has to do with intelligence, man. I would say that anybody that's smart enough will know that you're not going to be knowledgeable at everything, right? So having a team that will help you out, right? Teamwork makes the dream work, correct?
Exactly.
But no, man. Cole, do you have anything else to add?
I just think we got to recap the two things we've learned from this episode in terms of business success. One,
what is that?
Don't go it alone. Make sure you team up with someone who's knowledgeable about it, or read books a lot. That's what Li Ka-shing did, learn from other people's success. And two, ride your bike.
Ride your bike. Definitely ride your bike. Guys, we appreciate you guys listening to podcast number 2. If you guys have anything to say, well, leave a comment. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time.
We're out.
Thank you for joining us on the Syndicate Theory podcast. We hope that you're able to attain knowledge or formed an opinion on today's topic. If you enjoyed the podcast and would like to share your theories or knowledge, please leave a comment. The Syndicate Theory podcast is powered by open-minded intellectuals like you. So if you would like to hear more, please subscribe and leave a like. As Ray Kroc stated, the quality of a leader is reflected in the standards they set for themselves. Until next time.